Okay, so I've done the drawing and I'm thinking about using a little bit of masking fluid. I know this is viewed variously by people, and some people like it, some don't. But for me, I quite enjoy using it, and I would suggest that your approach to masking is to consider it almost as a paint, that you're using it to paint part of the surface. You're using it to make marks, and if all goes according to plan, once you take away the masking, then you've got those painterly aspects that are the paper. There are various things you can use. There's the actual masking fluid. This one's Pebeo, and of course the same company make a pen that will do the job. Not quite as fluid, but nevertheless it can be quite effective, particularly if you wanted to use straight lines. For me, I'd be looking at areas on the composition where it is already quite white, so both the bookends, and maybe just a little bit in the blue book, and possibly just highlight one or two lines that will help me later on. So I think it's important to stress that the masking fluid is not yes, it'll give you the white of the paper, but it'll also allow you to add colour to that. And if we're approaching it with putting some washes on first, it will just give you that little bit of fresh clean paper that you can either leave white or that you can add colour to it to create a more luminous finish. So the drawing's done. I've cropped it slightly on the left, only very slightly, so it just pushes the arrangement off centre. And I've been in some ways I've been quite accurate with the drawing in terms of what's there and what I've included and not included, but I've also tried to make the line in the drawing quite loose. These are not ruler marks, they are lines that are fairly fluid, and hopefully that will suggest and help with my approach to the actual painting. So in terms of the drawing gum, do make sure if you're using the fluid that it's shaken well. For me, I either use a dip-in pen for very fine lines, or a shaper works quite well, and that is on the way to a brush. I don't like to use a brush very much because it can tend to well, not only damage the brush, but the lines could be sharp and too heavy. So what I'm using it here is just to highlight one or two bits on this part of the bookend that I want to be white. Just watch you don't put it on too thick like that, and if you do, just lose it a little bit with just your finger. With regards to the pen, you've got to give it a shake as well and make sure it's flowing. So for instance, it might work quite well just here, but try and make the marks, I'm using the word fluid a lot, but try and make them so that they flow and they're not too static. And then there's just a broken line, so I'm using this to give me a highlight. I could perhaps use it a little bit in some of the work on the book, just trying to pick out. Here I'm not necessarily spelling the words that are there, but I can do that later if need be. But I'm just trying to give. We've got a WhatsApp group on the Patchings team, and people often use it quite frequently, and you get reminded, don't you, on the phone, which was that beep you've just heard. So little bits here and there, and I'll go on. So that's what I would suggest. Of course, the other secret about masking fluid is that you don't leave it on too long, but when you do take it off, the surface is perfectly dry. I think there is a slight danger when you're working outdoors, because we know that if the sun gets on it, a strong sunlight gets onto the masking, then it can almost bake it into the surface, and taking it off is not that easy. So that's the masking bit, and then we're going to follow this by looking at putting a wash on.